What up, world? Welcome to Esoteric Man. In this episode of Esoteric Man, we're going to break down another mystery from one of the great lights in Masonry, known to the common folk as the Bible. In this episode of Esoteric Man, I'm going to break down the esoteric meaning behind Luke chapter 6 and extract one of the hidden messages that if applied in your daily life, you will literally accomplish goals and change your life from limiting obstacles to true individual freedom where the real power exists, the Christ power within. The number one rule to unlocking any esoteric or occult mystery is simply knowing this: God does not exist outside of you. First and foremost, you have to realize that all of existence is God indeed. There is nothing that God is not. Just as the blazing star is a symbol of the deity as it manifests itself at any given moment, that same godly proponent has been extended to your abilities. Let us examine Luke chapter 6. The irony of the Bible, just as the symbol of Baphomet, is that it's a stumbling block for those who are not yet ready to understand its many messages. The very Savior character himself, who teaches us with his own words in the Bible to break free from man-made belief systems, is the very same character whom the uninitiated use to place themselves in man-made systems. So, basically, a chapter can cover several stories. It can focus on one story or have up to 3 or 4 stories in the chapter itself. So, we have to learn to break them down individually and look at them individually. But oftentimes, there is a common theme that is strung throughout all of the different stories. So, basically, Luke chapter 6, it covers 3 things. First, Christ heals on the Sabbath. Second, he chooses his apostles or his prophets. And thirdly, he blesses the obedient and woes the wicked. Okay, so obviously due to time, I'm only going to be able to focus on a few of the verses that really pop out. But what I would suggest is that if you are subscribed to my channel and you enjoy my interpretations of these scriptures, is that you have a Bible somewhere and you keep it somewhere where you know where it is, and that you go back and you read these chapters for yourself so that you can have a better, more personal relationship with the symbolic language that is in the Bible, because it does have an effect on the mind and the being. So don't short yourself. Please have a Bible and have it on hand so you can go over it. Anyways, let's examine Luke chapter 6. The chapter opens with a very significant symbol: corn. So most people would pass over this little detail as they read, but corn is a symbol of fertility and rebirth and progress and growth. So the first verse opens with, quote, "And his disciples plucked ears of corn and did eat, rubbing them in their hands," end quote. First of all, you have to understand that the 12 apostles are you and I. There are 12 zodiac signs, and every human being has a zodiac sign. So the 12 are indeed emblematic of you and I. And in this verse, we're depicted as becoming intimate with what the corn symbolizes. And not only are we becoming intimate with it, we're rubbing it, we're plucking it, we're eating it, right? We're developing a relationship with it. Not only that, but we're following Christ, because that's what the disciples were doing in this story, following Christ through the field. And that is symbolic of us. We are developing a relationship, an intimate relationship with the concepts and ideas of growth and progress and rebirth as we are following and moving towards our Christ self. In verse 2, we find a great example of what happens when we attempt to live our own individual lives and find our Christ self in a world of esoteric conditioned believers. Right off the bat, those of us who dare live our own individual lives are met with opposition by those who live lives of conformity and indoctrination. In verse 2, when the apostles symbolically eat the corn, the Pharisees of the day say, quote, "Why do ye that which is not lawful to do on the Sabbath days?" End quote. So right away, those who are loyal to organized systems are quick to question your individual authority. But Christ in verse 3 says, hey, wait a minute. David, who was a pretty successful and influential man, whom you all seem to have some respect for, entered the house of God and ate the showbread and also gave some to those who were with him. And the showbread, according to your own customs, is not lawful to eat except for the priests alone. So the story of David doing this against their will and wishes is simply an example of powerful men and women achieving their individual goals by living lives on their terms. Luke 6:5 says, quote, "And he said unto them that the Son of Man is Lord also of the Sabbath," end quote. So in verse 5, we're told that our inner Christ is not only the boss of our lives and decision-making Monday through Saturday, but that, quote, "the Son of Man is Lord also of the Sabbath," end quote. So regardless of what restrictions some man-made system may try to impose upon your individual authority, at the end of the day, you are your only obstacle. You are in charge 24/7, 365 days a year. You are also the Lord of the Sabbath. The rules and restrictions mentioned in this chapter by the Pharisees are simply symbolic of obstacles, excuses, and limitations of your own device and the opinions of others around you who are also failing to realize their own potential and authority as well. So to truly be unique and original and find your own individual potential, we have to let go of excuses and obstacles that are imposed upon us by external sources. So in verse 7, again, we find the Pharisees saying, no, 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 you can't do this, you can't do that, trying to impose their own limitations and restrictions onto the Christ self that is you. For those who are familiar with esoteric and occult study, we realize the significance of the right side of the body. The right side is the masculine side, the energy side, the active side, the side that accomplishes and carries out physical goals and tasks. Not to be confused with the right brain hemisphere. So, indeed, the majority of men and women that exist are right-handed. And if you want more information on that, go subscribe to Illuminati Light and look up the video that he done on the hand grips, and you'll find more in-depth detail on this, and it'll help you understand the power of your physical being in symbolic terms. Now, the reason I mention the right side of the body is because in verse 6, a man with a withered right hand comes to be healed. And once again, the Pharisees exclaim, no, 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 you can't do that on our holy day. Once again, these Pharisees are symbolic of obstacles and excuses that are actually the cause of the withered hand. Remember, the right hand is symbolic of action. So in verse 11, when the Pharisees see Christ heal the hand, which is to say he acted against their will and wishes, they immediately scorned him and tried to figure out what they should do with him and how to stop him. It says, quote, they were filled with madness, end quote. And once again, this is symbolic of the obstacles and excuses imposed upon us by a variety of sources from man-made institutions, religions, our own doubts and fears, etc. This chapter is all about our action and success being halted by fabricated illusions. In verse 13, we read that Christ chose his disciples. Once again, the 12 is us. If you have a zodiac sign, you are one of the 12. So the inner Christ is eternally calling each of us to be awakened to our true Christ self, to be free from external influences. And the rest of the chapter essentially goes on to emphasize overcoming obstacles, challenges, and judgments, etc. Now in verse 20, the inner Christ begins to teach some basic concepts about manifesting. For example, he says, quote, blessed are ye that hunger, for ye shall be filled. Blessed are ye that weep now, for ye shall laugh, end quote. So, this and the similar following verses are simply explaining that if you truly want something in life, you have to be hungry for it. You have to feel or acknowledge an absence of that thing which you truly desire. Then you have to create a hope and an expectation for that thing which you want. And this principle of the law of attraction is emphasized throughout the remaining of this chapter. For example, if I want a garden, I want a big field of corn, I can't just say, okay, I'm going to hope that this garden happens. Okay, no, it's not how it works. I have to realize what I want. Okay, I feel a vacant for that thing. Then I create a hope and an expectation for it. And I put forth an effort. I can't just say, universe, I have this energy inside of me of having, not of lacking. Come on, universe. I feel it. It's there already. It's not going to be there. I have to get up and I have to go put effort into it. So I have to acknowledge the lack of the thing I want. And then I have to also create an energy and an expectation and a hope that this thing will come forth. And then I have to put forth a plan, right? It's not based on harboring some energy. Although energy is significant, I'm not going to take that away from the law of attraction. But it's very dire that we understand the laws of cause and effect, the laws of correspondence, to be able to make things happen in our lives. I would like to point out that in verse 40, we're told that, quote, the disciple is not above his master, but everyone that is perfect shall be as his master, end quote. So it's obvious in this verse that to be perfect is to have a true understanding of who you really are. For all is God, and God is all. And to understand this is to be as our master. And the last two verses explain the parable of the building of our spiritual houses on a solid foundation, or it will collapse. This is simply an allusion to the fact that we are not our thoughts. We are not our identity. Our story of who we are, what we like or dislike, is not the part of us that is eternal or even real. This is the ego. And until we are willing to let the false self go, we will never be on a solid foundation. Please bear with me as I share this thought. This is a square. It is one of the working tools of a fellow mason. It can be likened to that of the human mind or psyche. Let us examine this tool in the context of male and female attributes, and how one can optimize his or her human potential by understanding the basic concept of its process and function. Once we understand the basic hermetic concept that the universe is mental and that we are only the microcosm replica of the macrocosm, then we are able to grasp the idea of who we truly are and our true godly nature. Just as the universe is mental, so is the mind. And just as God's creation process begins in His mind, the universe, so too does our creation process begin in our mind, a mini replica of the universe. And just as God has intelligence to create from, so too do we. You see, the word create actually means to organize. And just as God or the universe has material or intelligence to organize for His own purposes as He sees fit, so too do we. You see, God creates just as we do, through male and female polarities. Creation comes from these two elements. Just as the atom has a negative and positive charge, so too is all of existence made in this likeness. The square can be a symbol and reminder of this process. Two poles of the same thing. Just as God creates, so too do we. Thus we are made in His image. In fact, within each of us is found male and female. Just as God is the macro-organizer, you are the micro-organizer. Thus, a miniature replica of the divinity itself. Just as God has access to these two polarities, we likewise, within our own mental universe, have two polarities. And in the world of esoteric and occult language, we refer to these two poles, the left and right brain, as male and female. The left hemisphere as male, and the right as female. And as we consciously orchestrate the divine intercourse between these two hemispheres, we witness the very process in which all existence came into being. As above, so below. Let us examine some of the attributes of the left and right hemispheres. The left hemisphere, being the masculine, represents math, logic, sequencing, facts, reason, science, strategic, control, accuracy, language, cautious, rational. The right hemisphere represents emotion, creativity, imagination, rhythm, arts, intuition, visualization, holistic thinking, freedom, insight, non-verbal. We have to understand that everything we think is made up. Even something as simple as a particle. We have no clue what it really is or where it came from. We simply gave it a name, an identity, and a description so we can make order from chaos. But even our idea and perception of order is a fictional story. This was the true message of Jesus. Be free, be you, and bear the fruit of the Christ you are, not what a man-made system tells you to bear. This is the only way to your true Christ power. It's time to resurrect. The many man-made systems are as the tomb that Christ was laid in. Looking into a religious or spiritual institution for your own individual answers is like looking for Christ in the empty tomb. Remember what He said to them as they looked for Him in the empty tomb. Why seek ye the living amongst the dead? The secret is this. You are God. You have access to intelligence, Intelligence is information. Information is matter. And this is what manifestation is composed of, is matter and intelligence. These two hemispheres that we spoke of, the masculine active energy and the feminine passive energy, exist within each human being, with the two hemispheres and polarities, with their corresponding attributes. Now, consider yourself in the middle as God. You are the sole controller, the all-knowing, the one who decides, the one who creates. Now, the right brain hemisphere is the hopes, the dreams, the creative part, right? All those things that we mentioned, okay? And the left brain hemisphere that exists in us is the active, right? It is the logic and the thinking, the calculative that we have went over briefly. Now, a lot of people don't know how to make this work for them. This is only an allegory, but it's a true process that takes place inside of each of us. Imagine that this down here is a fire. Okay? You have a fire. And this right here is a pot of water. Okay? Now, I am deciding to make this happen. I am choosing what I want to happen. I want the water to steam. I want it to rise. I want it to boil. I want to create action. I want to create results. Now, what do I need to make that water boil? What do I need to make action happen? I need fire. Okay? Now, what is the fire? It is the feminine. Okay? The feminine attributes is the fire. It is what propels and moves into action. It compels the male, the masculine attributes to act. Okay? Now, how do I activate the fire? The right hemisphere. This is just a quick example. If I want to build a better body, okay, I have to find inspiration. I have to find imagination. I have to find motivation, okay? I have to find creativity. And that is what's going to be my fire, okay? Now, that fire that you find will feed the active aspect of yourself. So if I want to be have a better body, a better look, I need inspiration. So here's what you do. If you have a goal that you want to accomplish, you have to inspire yourself. You have to go online. You have to get on Instagram, Facebook, whatever, preferably Instagram, and look up what it is that you are interested in. You have to feed your imagination. You have to feed that fire. Okay? Look for photos. Look for literature and videos and music that inspire your goal. That will be the role of the right brain hemisphere, okay? And that is going to fuel and fire the active masculine to act. Because what the right hemisphere proposes has to be checked and balanced by the left hemisphere. Okay? So that's how it's done. The fire is going to cause an action. All right? And the masculine hemisphere, the left hemisphere, is going to make the fire successful, okay, within the bounds of knowledge and understanding and science and application. That is what the masculine is going to take care of. But you have to feed this, okay? I know a lot of people like to focus on the left and the masculine, which, you know, is definitely significant, but it's a song and dance. It works together, okay? And we're also coming to find out in science that, you know, some people say, oh, the right hemisphere is emotion only. But we've learned through science that not necessarily so. The brain is a little more complicated than that. Actually, for example, we find that anger tends to lean a little bit on the left hemisphere, okay? So that makes a lot of sense. If you look at really intelligent leaders, you know, heaven forbid we ever, you know, have another human being like Hitler, but most people in general are willing to admit that he was a genius. The guy was a mastermind, okay? But he had a problem with anger. So you see that that is evident and truth, that indeed, I can believe that anger does lean towards the left hemisphere. And that's okay. That's just the way it is. That's just science. But back to what we're saying here. Manifestation is the process for which you need fire, my friends. So if you want to make something happen in your life and you want to manifest something, build your fire. Build your fire and then apply the left hemisphere, the masculine. Now, with that being said, I thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing. Go subscribe to Illuminati Light and keep on spreading the word and the love. Thank you so much. Stay strong, stay powerful, stay God. Peace.